بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. So today inshallah we're going to study the chapter of the fuqaha phrase it Babu Salati Ahli al-A'dab. They phrase it the chapter of how to perform salah for the people who have excuses. That's how they phrase it. In this chapter, they speak about somebody who is not able to perform the postures of salah correctly because of illness. So that's the first person, or old age, something like that. And they also then later on in the chapter, which we won't discuss, they also speak salah connected to somebody in the battle and also salah connected to a traveler. So we're going to touch on, inshallah, masail connected to an elderly person or sick person. We're going to discuss masail on standing in salah, rules connected to standing in salah, sitting in salah, how to pray salah sitting, how to pray salah lying down, when to pray salah lying down. So praying salah lying down, praying salah sitting, praying salah in a plane, in a car. All these things connected to it in a few moments, inshallah. So we start off, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So as we said, those who have an excuse that this chapter speaks about to pray salah in a specific manner, they discuss a sick person. So a sick person, because he's sick, is not able to perform the pillars and the ways of normally performing salah. He cannot perform it. So then rules are made ease for him, because the principle in Sharia is that when a person is in difficulty, some form of ease is automatically necessitated. And that's from the Bible. The Quran mentions, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. Allah intends ease for you and does not intend difficulty for you. And Allah speaks in a few verses of the Quran of ease indeed. So based on that, the principle comes, al-mashaqqat tajlibu al-taysir. That difficulty automatically necessitates ease. So this person who is sick, or this person who is traveling, or this person who is in the battlefield, these people, they cannot perform a normal salah. So immediately a few rules of the salah, it's just made a bit easier for them. So this chapter comes after the chapter of excuses. The fuqaha mention a chapter of excuses for a person that he's allowed not to attend the mosque of Salatul Jama'ah, or not to perform salah in Jama'ah, and also not to perform Salatul Jumu'ah. So there, things connected to the salah, outside of the salah, are made easier for these people who have excuses. So now in this chapter, things in the salah are now dropped and made easier for a person who's not able to fulfill them. So when they say a sick person, they refer to a sick person who has some kind of ailment in his entire body or just in a portion of his body. So if you have a pain, let's say in your arm, in fiqh or in this chapter, you'd also be deemed marid, or you'd also be deemed a sick person. So it would be valid for you to follow the steps of ease that are in this mas'ala, in this chapter we're going to speak about, if you fall into them, even though it's not your entire body, but it's just a portion of your body. ولو كراكع أو معتمدا أو مستندا إلى شيء. So they say that it's obligatory on a person to perform the salah standing. It's obligatory on him to perform salah standing. So for farad salah, let's start it like that. So for farad salah, a person has to perform the salah standing. There's no way out. All the ulama agree on this. Allah says, وَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ, and stand performing salah in a manner where you are cognizant and fearful of Allah. So Allah referred to salah when He says qumu, He says stand. So the principle in fiqh, in usul al-fiqh, is when an action is named Allah or Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, refer to the entire action by a thing that's in the action, then that thing becomes a pala. So here Allah refers to salah, وَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ, is standing, is qiyam. So therefore qiyam is a pala. Allah says, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ رُكَّعُوا لَا يَرْكَعُونَ. When they are told to perform ruku', they do not perform ruku'. The meaning of this is salah. So salah is called ruku'. So what's another pala in salah? Ruku'. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that Allah said, I divided the salah. قَسَمْتُ الصَّلَاةَ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَ عَبْدِي نِصْفَيْنِ. I divided the salah between me, Allah is saying this, between me and my slave into two halves. فَإِذَا قَالَ عَبْدِي الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ قَالَ اللَّهُ قُلْتُ حَمِدَنِي عَبْدِي. When my slave says, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, I say, Allah says, my slave has praised me. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam goes on to mention Surah Al-Fatiha. So here, Allah says in the Hadith Qudsi, I divided the salah in half. Half for me and half for my slave. So here Surah Al-Fatiha is called salah, therefore it's a pillar in salah. Therefore, it's a pillar in salah. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam didn't say that Allah said, I divided Surah Al-Fatiha. Rather, salah was called by a portion, or the portion of salah was, the portion in salah was called salah. Therefore, this thing becomes a pillar. So now to stand in salah, we said the fard salah. So you have to pray in the hanbali madhab, the fard salah, whether it's fard aini or fard kifaya. The fard kifaya as well. So fard kifaya, fard aini, those fard salah that each person has to be responsible for himself. And fard kifaya are those salah that if a community, a group of people performs it, then it counts for the entire people. So like Salatul Eid and Salatul Janazah, they are fard kifaya, as you mentioned in the Eid lesson. So that's what it would be in the hanbali madhab. In the Hanafi madhab, they say the fard salah, they include the wajib salah, Salatul Witr. And also they say that which takes the rule of Salatul or wajib salah or Witr salah, like 2 rakah Salatul Fajr. Ibn Abidin mentions this. So also that has to be performed standing. And the maliki madhab also say the fard salah, that's also fard kifaya. Fard aini and fard kifaya. Fard aini and fard kifaya. And then the shafi madhab, they say the fard salah mainly. And they say, therefore, the non-fard salah, you can pray it sitting as a start. But they say, they give a reason. They say because these salah, they are performed, many are performed. So to make it easier, you're allowed to pray it sitting. So therefore, the fuqaha, some of them, Shafi'i scholars, they created وَلِذَا قِيلٍ. And based on that, it is said that those salah that they deem sunnah, but they do not occur regularly, it's better to perform them standing, or it should be performed standing. Like what? Like Eid Salah. Eid Salah is sunnah according to the Shafi'iyya, but it happens twice a year. Or Salatul Janazah. So that's as a start on how they mention for non-fard salah. But again, each madhab, or specifically maliki and the Shafi'i madhab, they have a bit more details. And a bit more details on the nawafil salah, but that's just to get us into the mas'ala. So they say these are the salawat, you have to perform them standing. They say even if standing is on one leg, even if you stand on one leg, because what's the meaning of standing? The meaning of standing is a person's body weight is all on his legs, which means if you lift both your legs up, you'd fall. If you lift both your legs up, you fall. If you lift one leg up, you'd still be standing because you are on your own weight. You are balancing yourself on your own 2 legs or on your own 1 leg. So even if you are standing on 1 leg, the salah will be valid. They say, well, it's makruh, but the salah will be valid. So they say to such an extent, the qiyam is a pillar in salah, that even if a person has to stand and his back is bent as if he's in ruku'. So he's not standing straight up, but he's bent like this. Almost to ruku', or even if he's to the extent of ruku', but because the person cannot stand up properly, right? If he's bent or he's to the extent of ruku', then it will be valid. But if he can't stand to bend, even though if he's able to stand, but not full straight up, but he bends a bit, but he is able to stand, he has to stand. To that extent, they say. So a person, when he stands in salah, what does that mean? It means a person stands, his back straight up. His back has to be straight up. That's what it means. Not the neck. So the Shafi'i scholars say to bend the head like this, it's sunnah because it helps you look on the floor. It helps you look at the face of sajdah. And the hanbali scholars say, they don't say sunnah straight up, but they say it's okay to do so. So the main thing is the back, he's standing up straight. If a person is able to stand up straight, but he's hunched in his salah, then when would this be deemed valid or invalid? They say that if a person is closer to standing than he is to ruku', If a person is closer to standing than he is to ruku', then that will count as qiyam. This is for a person capable of standing up. If you are not capable, then you stand as much as bent as you can, even if it is the extent of ruku'. So now they say that the ruku', what would be the minimum ruku' when a person is performing ruku' or to catch a rak'ah? They say when the palms reach your knees, when your palms reach your knees, so you are bent over. If you have average size arms, if your palms are going to reach your knees to that level of bending your back, that's now ruku'. That's now ruku'. So anything less than that, where your palms will not reach your knees, then that is deemed qiyam. That is deemed qiyam. That is deemed qiyam. So it's important to know this. If you are going to catch the imam and he's in ruku', and you did the opening takbir and you're trying to go.
So as you're going down into ruku', the imam starts coming up. The imam starts coming up. So you're not sure, did you catch ruku' or not? So how do you deduce this? So we said that the minimum ruku' is that your palms have to reach your knees. So you have to bend down that much, even if your palms don't go to your knees, but you've bent down far enough that your palms can go to your knees. If you've done that, that is closer to ruku', so it would count as ruku'. Less than that is qiyam. So if you've gone down that much and the imam is coming up, so now what happens here? What the imam should do is his dhikr that comes, or a person in general salah, his dhikr should be between his takbir, or the dhikr that comes between postures. They should be between postures. So when you're going from, let's say, standing into ruku' and you say Allahu Akbar, you should start Allahu and end the Akbar from Allahu. You should start it as you go down, and Akbar when you reach down. So some people, they're already down, then they say Allahu Akbar. So now that's incorrect. His takbir was done in ruku', and the dhikr of ruku' is Subhana Rabbiyal Azim. So that's incorrect. Or while he's standing, he says Allahu, and he's already halfway through the dhikr, and then he starts going down. That is more valid than the first one, because this part of the dhikr would be in the correct place. And in the first one I mentioned, the dhikr of takbir is going to be in the next posture. So that's better than the first one, but the sunnah is to say Allahu Akbar. So what the imam is, as he goes up, he should be saying Sami Allahu liman hamida. So the movement and the sound should come at the same time. But some ai''imah, they move first, and then the sound comes when they're standing. Maybe there's a mic, or they just don't know the fiqh, or they're just not precise in fiqh. So they go up, and then Sami Allahu liman hamida is said, or the takbir is said. They go into ruku', and then Allahu Akbar. That's incorrect. That is incorrect, and it's a common mistake. So what should happen? The imam should be saying Sami Allahu liman hamida as he gets up, and then hamida is when he's already reached standing. So what some ai''imah do is they stand up first. They stand up first before they say the takbir, before they say the tasmi' of Sami Allahu liman hamida. Or while they're in ruku', they already start Sami Allah, and then they go up. So what counts here is the movement of the imam. What counts here is the movement of the imam, not what he says. But that's if you can see the imam. That's if you can see the imam. So you're entering the mosque, there's a row or two, it's not that crowded. You can see the movement of the imam as you are doing the opening takbir and you're going down. And you can see the imam has already started his movement up. And he's now he's now closer to qiyam. He's now closer to qiyam out of the ruku'. And you are on your way down. If you've went down enough that your palms can reach your knees, you've caught him. You've caught him if he's not raised enough that he's closer to qiyam. If he's not raised enough closer to qiyam, you've caught him. You've caught the rak'ah. And if he's raised further than that before you've gone down, then you've not caught him. That's when you can see him. If you can't see the imam, then you work on the sound. Then you hear the sami'ah. Once he said that, then you're going to deem that as if he's already out of ruku'. So then you going down, if you are closer to ruku', if you are closer to your hands, your palms reaching your knees, before he said the sa of Sami Allah, then you've got the rak'ah. If not, then you've missed the rak'ah. And that is for a person who has average size arms. That's for a person who has average size arms. If a person has quite extra, more than normal, long arms or shorter arms than normal, longer arms than normal or shorter arms than normal, then what counts is his movement of the back. If he's closer to qiyam, closer to standing, then it would count qiyam. And if he's closer to ruku', then it would count as ruku'. even though he could be slightly off qiyam because his hands are longer, his palms will reach his knees, you don't count it like that. So you won't say he's caught or didn't catch the rak'ah. And if he had shorter arms, then he'd have to go extra lower. He'd have to go a bit lower to reach his knees, so that won't count. And if a person is not sure completely, he's going down and he's not sure where he reached, he's not sure the imam. Even though he could see or he could hear the imam, he's not sure, then in this case you say he didn't catch the rak'ah. In this case he didn't catch the rak'ah. In that case a person would make qada of that rak'ah. So this is the importance of knowing this mas'ala of minimum ruku', because it connects to more than one thing. One thing is for qiyam in salah, and the other thing is connecting or catching the imam, whether he's in ruku' or qiyam, to catch a rak'ah, and other similar masail, because fiqh connects.
So they say if a person is hunchbacked, if a person has a hunchback, he's walking like this, he's got a problem in his back, he's hunchback, then in this case he still has to stand in salah, but he'll be standing as if he's in ruku'. So when a person is only able to stand to the extent when he's in ruku', then how does he differentiate between his ruku' and his qiyam? They say a couple of ways. Number one, with your hands. In qiyam, your hands will be folded above or below your navel. And in ruku' they will be placed on your knees. So that's one of the ways to differentiate. The second way is through intention. This person will intend qiyam when he's in qiyam, and then he'll intend ruku' when he's in ruku'. But also to get up from ruku', he'll intend it, because he'll be standing like this, and then ruku' he'll be the same, and after ruku' he'll be the same. The other way is that a person in ruku' he lowers his head a bit more if he's able. Because qiyam is going to be as up as he can. So then for ruku' he goes down a little bit more, and that would count as the ruku', obviously with the intention, and the hands will be placed somewhere else. So that would be the differences there. They say a person has to stand in qiyam in salah to the extent that even if he is mu'tamidan or mustanidan, even if he has to rely on something using his hand, they say mu'tamidan. So i'timad, relying or reclining on something, i'timad or istinad. Both of them have the meaning of reclining or leaning on something. But the difference between the two is that i'timad is usually used to recline with your hand. So you're relying on something, or reclining or balancing or leaning on something with your hand or with your arm. So therefore, that means now you're on a stick, or you're on a crutch, or even if you need a person, the help of a person that you balance on that person, or two people. Or they say istinad. Istinad is with your back. So you recline on something with your back, standing. If you can stand, even if to complete the standing you need to recline on something with your back or with your hand, then you have to do this. You don't go to sitting. You have to do this. Number 3, they say even if you have to pay, if you have financial ability above your needs, and it's not too expensive a price, it's a fair price that you pay to buy something that you can lean on, because to stand in salah. Or even for somebody, you need to hire somebody that you can stand on. Then you have to do that. You have to do that. To that extent, qiyam is so important. So they say many of the fuqaha say that you rely or recline on something, even if it be a person. Ibn Aqil from the Hanabila says you do not need to pay to hire a person. Right? So he is different with regards to hiring a person. Now the fuqaha say, walau karaka, even if a person has to stand as someone in ruku' or reclining or leaning on something. So this walau is to indicate there's a difference of opinion. That Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullahi alayhi says a person does not need to recline or hire somebody or buy something to stand in his salah. So if he cannot stand himself, then he sits. He cannot stand himself, so he sits. Shaykh, but they will disturb the other person in salah. You meaning if you're leaning on somebody else next to you, and if that person is in salah as well? Maliki scholars, they say, while they say you recline on something or you lean on something, they say except 2 things. Except somebody, a person in janaba or a lady in hayd. And that's because of the impurity side of things for these people. So you do not lean on them in salah. So the Maliki madhab they say that if you can find somebody else or something else to lean on, but you've leaned on someone that is in janaba or in hayd, then you have to repeat the salah as long as the time is there. As long as the time is there and you're able to repeat, you have to repeat. And if you cannot find somebody else or something else to recline on, then it's okay. But they say for a lady in hayd, she has to be a mahram. She has to be a mahram. So you can't lean on somebody, a lady who's in hayd, if she's not your mahram. So they mentioned that mas'ala, which is kind of fits in with all the madahib and the vibes that they mentioned, not in this chapter specifically, but in other chapters. But the Maliki scholars pointing out in this chapter. So when they say reclining or leaning against something, they say, we said qiyam is where you basically relying on the weight of your own feet. So if you recline or lean on something to the extent that if that thing was moved, you'd fall. So you were fully reclined or leaning on that thing fully, then that would be invalid. That would be invalid. That would be invalid. And that's more so for a person who is capable of fully standing on his own. And he is leaning on something or reclining on something. Because if a person is capable of performing salah standing and he is reclining on something, his salah will be valid. His salah will be valid. It will just be makruh. It will just be makruh. But if he's reclining on it to the extent where that thing is removed, he will fall. Then that qiyam will not count as qiyam. That qiyam will not count as qiyam. A person who's not able to stand other than in this manner, in this person, some of the fuqaha say he still leans like this on something to that extent, it's better than sitting. Or in this case, he can sit. Or in this case, he can sit down and perform salah. Or in this case. So that means to that extent, when you can not only recline or lean on something to such an extent, you are so weak that if this thing moves, you are reclined to a full extent, then you will fall, then in this case, you get sit. So the Shafi'i scholars, they say that if you are reclining on this thing, stick or crutch or person to the extent where if this thing moves, you fall, it still counts as qiyam. So there they differ. It will still count. Your salah will still be valid. But if you're reclining to the extent that if you lift your feet up, you will not fall. You will not fall. And here it doesn't count. Here it doesn't count as qiyam. So they mentioned that the Maliki scholars say that your performance of the salah is in a few categories. You have to stand alone with nothing. If you are not able, then you recline on something. If still you're not able, then you sit down and perform salah without reclining on anything. Then, if you are not able to sit without leaning or reclining on anything, then you lean or recline on something. And if then you still can't, then you perform salah on your side. You perform salah on one of your sides that we're going to discuss just now. And there they have a difference of opinion in the Maliki school, whether you can just, if you are not able to stand alone, then they say you stand on something reclining, and thereafter you sit. So this sequence between standing on something, reclining or leaning, and sitting, is it wajib to first try and recline and then sit? Or is it optional, or you have a choice, whatever you do? So here they differ whether it's wajib to first try and recline on something before going to sitting, or can you go immediately? Whether it's wajib or it's mustahab. They call it mandub to do that. So that's in the Maliki madhab. And then the standing that's in qiyam, the standing that we mentioned, for what portion of qiyam? Is it wajib or is it rukn for a person to stand? So a person stands in qiyam to the extent where he says Allahu Akbar. That must be done standing. If he begins the takbir sitting and ends it standing, or he begins it standing and ends it sitting, the salah becomes nafil salah. The salah becomes nafil salah. It doesn't count. It doesn't count as a fard salah. So the entire takbir must be said standing. That means if a person is only capable of standing to say the opening takbir, he has to stand. He can't start sitting. And that's number one. The second rukn of standing is for Surah Al-Fatiha. So that means if you are capable and able to recite the opening takbir in Surah Al-Fatiha standing in salah, you have to do so. If you do not, your salah becomes invalid. So Surah Al-Fatiha, in the first rak'ah, it's the opening takbir in Surah Al-Fatiha. And every other rak'ah, the pillar of standing comes in Surah Al-Fatiha. And the same rule would apply for a person who's not able to stand, so his pillar becomes sitting. He has to sit properly for the opening takbir and Surah Al-Fatiha. And then the next rak'at, Surah Al-Fatiha. So that has to be done. That's the rukn of standing. So a person who can stand for these amounts, he has to stand. He can't just start the salah sitting. He can't just start the salah sitting. He has to stand for these amounts because these are the rukn of standing. Standing is a rukn, standing is a pillar, but this pillar has a pillar. And that means, or saying opening takbir is a pillar, but it has a pillar as well. And that is to say it standing. Same with Surah Al-Fatiha. So a person who does not do that, his salah would be invalid. His salah would be invalid. So then they say if a person, so now that has to do with standing. That has to do with standing. In the Hanafi madhab, they are basically the same as what I mentioned. But in the Hanafi madhab, if a person is not able to perform sajdah on the ground, if a person is not able to perform sajdah on the ground, he can start his salah sitting. He can start his salah sitting. So it's not like the other madhahib who say that he has to stand and or standing if he can and then sit for sajdah. No, they say in this case it's better for a person to perform the entire salah sitting and indicating for these movements. He doesn't need to stand. So when sajdah falls, then the standing falls, and then obviously the ruku falls. So for them, it's the other way. So a person on a plane, for example, if he cannot perform the salah properly, where he's going to do sajdah on the floor, he can immediately, in the Hanafi madhab, start it sitting. The other schools do not agree. But the Hanafi madhab, it is like that. And then they have a few more details. We'll explain it just now, inshallah. So then for a person who cannot stand, and we mentioned the masail connected to standing. In this case, a person can sit. But him not being able to stand, what does that mean? That means either, number one, he's not physically able to stand. For the person who can perform sajdah or cannot. A person who cannot perform sajdah on the ground. A person who cannot perform sajdah on the ground in the Hanafi madhab, here it's better for him to perform salah sitting. So that's how it would be. Okay.
So, sitting on a chair or sitting on the ground?
We'll discuss it just. Okay. So now, a person who's not able to stand, not able meaning either he's physically not able, or if him standing would increase his sickness, then he sits. Or if him standing will delay cure for his illness, then he prays sitting. Or the last one, if standing causes him a lot of difficulty, if it's a lot of difficulty for him to stand, in this case, he can pray sitting. So here he's capable of standing, but there's a lot of difficulty. Either actually a lot of difficulty, that he just struggles. But some of the fuqaha from the Hanabila, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, and some of the Shafi'i scholars mention that this difficulty is linked to a person's khushu'. It's linked to a person's mind being in the salah and his tranquility in the salah. So if he's in salah to the extent where he's not comfortable, he's in difficulty, that he just wants to finish Surah Al-Fatiha and get to ruku', because he's not comfortable, he's uneasy. In this case, it counts as too much of difficulty. In this case, he prays sitting. Connected to this, they mention a person who is, let's say, in a house and he's trying to hide away from his enemy. And this house has no roof or it has windows. The enemy will see him if he's inside, if he's praying standing. So in this case, they say a person like this can pray sitting, because then they won't see him while he's sitting, and he's a fearful person. He's a person that is in fear. He can pray sitting. Or a person who is in a house that has a low roof, or anywhere he is, in a plane, in a ship, wherever he is, that the roof is low, that he can't stand properly, here he can pray sitting. But still, some of the ulama say he stands up as far as he can, even if he's like a person in ruku'. I've got to explain just now. So here the roof is low, he can't stand up straight. So here he can pray with a little bend in his back, or a lot of bend in his back, or he can pray sitting. Those two opinions are for that. So a person who cannot stand in salah, like how we mentioned, then this person can perform salah sitting. So now, how should he sit? For sitting, they say even if a person hurt himself or even intentionally hurt himself, a person hurt himself intentionally or unintentionally, let's say intentionally, even if he intentionally hurt himself and he can't stand in salah, it's okay, he can pray salah sitting. He can pray salah sitting. So connected to this is how to sit. So how to sit in salah. As a starting point, we'd say all the ulama say a person, across all the schools, they say a person can sit in whichever manner is easy for him, whichever manner he wishes to sit. So if he wants to sit cross-legged, he can sit like that. If he wants to sit the way he sits in tashahhud, he can sit like that. If he wants to sit in a way where his legs are out towards the qiblah, his feet are out towards the qiblah, he can sit like that. If he wants to sit in a manner where he's lifting his legs up, so his thighs are basically on this part of his body, on his, like his stomach and his chest, and he's holding it like this, or not holding it, it's valid. Anywhere you sit, it's valid, it's valid. They question on what is the best manner to sit. What is the best manner to sit? So they say, other than Hanafi, they say that in qiyam, so when you're standing up in qiyam, or after ruku, and after ruku, that's your qiyam. When you begin salah and after ruku, that's called qiyam. You sit cross-legged. You sit cross-legged. And then in ruku and sujood, then you sit like how you sit in tashahhud. You sit like how you sit in tashahhud. So that has been reported from Anas radiallahu anhu, number one. Number two, and also it helps to differentiate the postures. So if you're sitting cross-legged, then in ruku you change your posture, and then you've changed it again for your standing after ruku, cross-legged again, and then you went into sajdah, and then you sat, or you didn't go into sajdah fully, but you indicated for sajdah, and you sat in the tashahhud manner. Now you differentiate the postures. It can also help a person so he doesn't forget which posture he's in. So that's how you sit. That's what they say is the best manner to sit. But every manner a person wishes to sit in counts. It's fine. There's not a problem. So connected to this, which means sitting on a chair is also called in Arabic qu'ud. It's also called sitting. It comes in Abu Dawood, Ali radiallahu anhu asked for a chair, فَقَعَدَ عَلَيْهِ, and he sat on it. So the Arabs called it qu'ud. So here, that's why sitting on a chair would be fine as well. Sitting on a chair would be fine as well, excluding the Hanafi method. The Hanafi method, we'll touch on it just now. So sitting on a chair is fine. Connected to sitting on a chair are a few masail connected to this. So number one, if a person says, if I sit on a chair, I can perform my salah standing and my ruku properly, and then sajdah I sit. Because I'm on a chair, I cannot do sajdah, but I can pray standing and ruku. But if I sit on the ground, I can't stand and I can't do ruku, but I'll manage to do sajdah. What should he do? So we say to this person, what you should do, what is recommended for you to do, not a must, it's what's recommended for you to do, is to sit in whichever manner will allow you to do more pillars in salah. Whichever manner allows you to do more pillars in salah. Therefore, if sitting on a chair allows you to stand properly and ruku' properly, but only not do sajdah, then that's two pillars that you can do on a chair, therefore sit on a chair. And if you can, let's say, only do qiyam, for example, properly, but ruku' is going to be indicating while sitting on a chair, not properly. And sajdah also won't be properly on a chair. That's one rukun you can do properly. And if you sit on the floor, you do sajdah properly, but you won't manage qiyam and you won't manage ruku'. So that's also one rukun. So in this case, you have a choice. So therefore, when you have a choice, if a chair is easier for you, you can sit on a chair. But the ulama say the best manner to sit is cross-legged. So that's only possible on the floor. Not on a chair. It's not possible on a chair. It's cross-legged on the floor. So in that case, if a person is able to sit on the chair and on the floor, and he'll only manage one rukun sitting on the chair, and one rukun sitting on the floor, then in this case, sit on the floor. Because then you can sit in the manner of cross-legged, and then in the manner of tashahhud for ruku' and sajdah. The other opinion in the hanbali madhab, Ibn Qudamah chooses it and others, is that in ruku' you sit cross-legged. They say because ruku' is connected to qiyam. So just now we're going to discuss a person who can perform salah standing, but he cannot perform ruku' and sujood properly, he stands and performs ruku' and he sits and indicates for sajdah. Because the ruku' is connected to standing. Ruku' is connected to standing. So therefore, to sit in the same posture between the two, they recommend this. So either works, but this is just what the two opinions that the fuqaha have. And then, again, connected to the chair. If a person is sitting on a chair when he's gone for salah in jama'ah, so now at the mosque, some masajid, they have a row for people in chairs. So then the mas'ala is quite clear. There's only people in chairs sit in this row. Then you can just connect it as people said. But in any case, yes, this is what a person recommended, the ulama say a person should do. Because what happens, you find some people, when they want to join the row, if the chair has 4 legs, right? 2 in the front, 2 in the back. So sometimes some people put the front chairs in line with the saff, in line with the row. So the back 2 chairs kind of disturb those behind. And others put the back 2 legs in line with the row, and then his front 2 legs are in front of the row. So if he stands for a part of the salah, then he's in front of the row. He's in front of the rest of the people. So how should he put his chair? So here the ulama say there's 2 situations. Number 1, if a person is going to sit on the chair throughout the salah, then in this case, the ulama say a person sitting, by which body part is he deemed in line with the saff? Or when he stands right next to the imam, they say you shouldn't be in front of the imam. You should be in line or behind the imam. Which body part do you deduce? If a person has to be, let's say, feet next to the imam, but his foot is bigger than the imam, and he's in front of the imam like this. This is the ma'mum, because his foot is bigger. Then would he deem he's in front of the imam? No, because they say the ankles or the back of the feet. So for sitting, they say the lower back. So in this case, the one in the row who's sitting on the chair, he puts the back legs in line with the people. So that means the front 2 legs of the chair would be ahead of the row, but he's sitting. So when he sits, his shoulders will be in line with everyone else. Now, the second option is a person is performing parts of the salah standing. And other parts sitting. So in this case, what he'd do, if he's able to put his chair in a way where he won't disturb others. So let's say there's not many people, only one saff, then it's simple. Or on the sides where there won't be anyone behind, then he can put the front legs of the chair in line with everyone else. So when he stands, then he'd be in line with the other people next to him. But if there's going to be people behind him, if he's going to have people behind him, then what now? They say if he's able, so now he puts, in this case, if he's able to do the following thing, he puts the front legs in line with everyone. So that means when he stands, his shoulders will be in line with those next to him, but the back legs will be on the row behind. So if someone does sajdah specifically, it will disturb that person behind. So in that case, if he's able to, when he goes into ruku' and now he needs to sit, or in sajdah and he needs to sit, if he's able to, with few movements, slide the chair forward to come in line with everyone for when he sits, then he does that. He's able to slide the chair a little bit in front, so the back of the legs now become in line with everyone as he does ruku' and as he does sajdah and he sits. So that means when he's sitting, his shoulders will be in line with everyone else. In that case, he does it. In that case, he does that with not many movements. So it's a slight movement pushing the chair forward. If he's not able to push the chair forward, then in this case, he puts the back 2 legs in line with everyone else. That means when he stands in the salah, because he can pray a portion of it standing, his standing is going to be ahead of the row. It's going to be ahead of the row. Everyone is standing here and he's here. In this case, they say this being in front by a small amount is overlooked. And if he puts the chair in line with everyone, that will allow him to stand with everyone, the back legs will cause difficulty and harm to someone behind. And causing harm to a Muslim is one of the reasons where a sunnah can fall off. So the sunnah of joining the rows will fall. So you cannot try and fulfill a sunnah in doing so, you harm someone else. You harm someone else. You do not do that. You do not do that. If there's going to be harm involved, then the sunnah falls. The sunnah falls. So in this case, a person puts the back legs of the chair in line with everyone else. When he stands, he'll be in front of everyone. When he sits, he'll be in line with everyone. And that's how we end salah. And that's how a chair should be placed in the row. And that's how a chair should be placed in the row. Now, in the Hanafi madhab, if a person cannot pray standing, he prays sitting, or cannot do sajdah on the ground, he prays sitting. It's better for him to pray sitting. They say it's allowed to pray standing, like how the other madhab say. And then when he comes to sajdah, he sits. But they say it's better for him to pray sitting. When praying sitting, the Hanafi madhab say that a person should pray sitting on the ground. They say a person should pray sitting on the ground, not on a chair. He should pray sitting on the ground, and his sajdah then is on the ground. If he's able to do sajdah, he has to do sajdah. If he does not do sajdah, his salah is invalid. Yes, you are allowed to then not perform the qiyam, the standing as you should, and the ruku as you should, but the sajdah has to be performed. They say the sajdah is the objective of the salah, and the standing and the ruku is a means to the objective. It's the means to the objective. That's why if a person were to be able to perform sajdah but not perform ruku', the sajdah does not fall. Like how if you cannot perform sajdah, ruku' falls. But if you cannot perform ruku', sajdah does not fall. Sajdah has to take place. And from the ground. If you are not able to sit on the ground, then you sit on the chair. And if you sit on the chair, and you're able to do sajdah on the ground, then you do sajdah on the ground. If not, then you indicate with the head or the back, as I mentioned just now. So that's how it is in the Hanafi madhab. In the Hanafi madhab, salah standing. If you cannot stand or you cannot do sajdah, then you sit. Sit where? Sit on the ground. You sit on the ground. They do say you sit in any manner, like how I mentioned earlier. They say that when you sit in salah and you're sitting on the ground, you can sit in any manner. Some of the Hanafi fuqaha, like Zufar, says you sit in the tashahhud posture. You sit in the tashahhud posture. And some of them say that's the relied upon position of the Hanafi madhab. But Ibn Abidin says that if sitting in the tashahhud posture is the easiest posture for a person to sit, then he should sit like that. Then he should try and sit like that, right? If not, he can sit in any way he likes. In terms of ruku' and sajdah, he sits in the tashahhud posture if possible, as we mentioned just now. But he should sit on the floor. So what people do many times, they just sit on the chair. Or they bring a chair, they walk in with the chair, and then they sit and perform salah. Salah is invalid. Your takbiratul ihram, Allahu Akbar, has to be standing if possible. And then Fatiha, as much as possible of it, standing, it has to be done. If you cannot, you can read one verse, then sit. If you sat for the whole Surah Al-Fatiha, your salah will be invalid. In the Hanafi madhab, you sit on the floor and perform sajdah and perform your salah. If not on the floor, then you sit on a chair, and then you sit on a chair. And then even with a chair, if you are not able then to sit on a chair, now here some fuqaha say also that you sit reclining, like how we mentioned with qiyam. If you cannot sit alone on the chair with no backrest, then you recline on something, either the backrest or the sides for the handrest or the armrest or something else, a stick as well if you can. You recline on something to try and pray sitting, which kind of indicates from the way they phrase it, indicates similar to how the Maliki school clearly phrase it, and that is you try and sit without completely relying on something. So you try and sit alone without a backrest. And if it has a backrest, then try and not recline fully on it. That it's as if that if you move the backrest, you'd fall. But try and have some support of your own back, of your own self, of your own body up. If not, and you recline on something, and you cannot recline on something, or afford to buy something to recline on, then in this case, you pray salah on your side. So this is the opinion of the Hanafi, of the hanbali madhab, maliki madhab, and shafi'i madhab. You pray the salah on the side. On your side. Which side? They say you pray salah on your right side. If not on your right side, then your left side. So here, the Hanafi and the hanbali madhab, they say you can pray on your right or your left side. The right takes preference, the left side is not makruh, but you can. The Shafi'i madhab says if you pray on the left side while being capable on the right side, it's makruh. So you pray on your side and your face is in the direction of the qiblah. Your face is in the direction of the qiblah. That's how it should be. If you are capable of reaching of your face facing the qiblah, then that's how you should. If you cannot, then you can't help it. You pray on your right side and however you are. Right? So you pray with your face facing the qiblah. The Shafi scholars say even your front body. So they say your face and your front body. So as much of the front body as you can face the qiblah with, from the top to your feet, you try and do so. Otherwise, at least your chest and face. Otherwise, at least your face. At least your face, you try and face the qiblah with that part. And then, if you're not, then on the left side. If you're not able on the right side, then on the left side. Some fuqaha say either the right or the left, whichever one is easier for you. If they are equal, then on the right side takes preference. Then the right side takes preference. So you then perform salah. You cannot sit now. You perform salah lying on your side, your right side, and your face facing the direction of the qiblah. So the qiblah, you face it with your face. You face it with your face. Same on the left side. If you cannot pray on the right, then on the left. And if you cannot, then you pray lying on your back. Then you pray lying on your back. So before we go to the masail of lying on your back, we just touch on a few things on salah on the side. For salah, when you pray salah lying on your side, so that means your face is facing the direction of the qiblah. How would you do ruku' and sajdah? So if your face is like this, right, you're facing like this. And then when you have to do ruku' and sajdah, you indicate with your head. You indicate with your head. That's all. So do you tilt it for ruku' towards the ground? So you like this basically. And do you tilt it like this for ruku' and then walk for sajdah? Or do you tilt it towards your chest for ruku' a bit and then walk for sajdah if you're capable? So here the ulama say you tilt your head when you're indicating for ruku' towards your chest. So if you're like this, you tilt it like this and then like that. So not towards the ground as if you're turning your head like that. Not like that. Towards your chest. That's how somebody does ruku' if he's praying lying on the side. So he'll tilt his head a little bit for ruku' and a bit more for sajdah. And a bit more for sajdah. That's if he's praying on his side. If he's praying on his side, either side. So that's how ruku' and sajdah would be done. For a person sitting on a chair or a person sitting on the ground, if he prays salah, how will his ruku' and sajdah happen? His ruku' and sajdah, they say, now excluding Hanafi, they say the minimum ruku' is where, if you're sitting where your head, the Shafi scholars phrase it quite clearly. They say where your forehead goes above as you bend down just beyond your knees. So here's your knees and your head is coming down, your forehead is there. So it's just above the knees. That's minimum ruku'. So anything less than that, for a person able to do that, it won't count sitting. And then sajdah, it's more. You cannot go fully on the ground, then it's more than your ruku'. You cannot fully bend for ruku' until where I mentioned, then you bend as far as possible, but not completely as far as possible, a little less. So when you go for sajdah, then you indicate, you bend your head and you bend your neck and your back as far as possible, just a bit further than your ruku'. If you cannot bend your back and your neck, then you indicate with your neck only. So you in ruku', Allahu Akbar, a little bit, Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, Sami' Allahu liman hamidah, Allahu Akbar, Subhana Rabbiyal Azim. This is when you cannot bend your neck and your back. If you can bend both, then you're going to go Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, Sami' Allahu liman hamidah. And then your sajdah, if you can do a proper sajdah on the floor, you do so, even from a chair. If not, then you bend a bit further, Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, Subhana Rabbiyal Azim. So you bend a bit further, like that. So that's connected to ruku' and sajdah for sitting down, and also for lying down. Then there's a few masail. Let's try and finish these main masail of how to perform salah in these postures. And then there's a few related masail we finish in the upcoming class. So we're almost done, inshallah. There's a few interesting masail left. Okay, let's start with. Okay, if a person is performing sajdah on the ground, but he cannot perform a full sajdah, he can only put hands on the ground or even his nose. So let's say his hands on the ground. So he cannot put his forehead on the ground, he can only put his hands on the ground. Here the ulama say, excluding maliki, we touched on maliki just now, that in this case, he does not need to put his hands on the ground. This is the relied upon position. So in this case, he'd indicate. Where would his hands go? Some people, they do sajdah like this, and the hands are in the air. The hands are in the air. Incorrect. The hands stay on the thighs. They stay on the thighs or they stay on the knees. They stay on the thighs or they stay on the knees. So they do not indicate. This is excluding the maliki method. We'll touch on it just now. So you just bend your head. Your hands do not do sajdah as well. People do this. You don't do that. You don't do that. You just indicate with your head. And if you cannot put your forehead on the ground, do you put your hands on the ground as well? Some of the fuqaha, the second opinion in the hanbali method is that you do that. You put your hands on the ground and then you go as far as you can with your head. If you cannot even bend to that extent where your hands can reach, then your sajdah falls, you just indicate. The relied upon position of the hanbali method is that if you cannot do a full sajdah, then you just indicate. You just indicate with your back and your neck, like how we explained just now, or just with your neck if you cannot do your back. They say if you cannot do sajdah on your forehead, you do not do sajdah on your temples. So these sides of your head or above your forehead, you do not need to do sajdah on them. The Shafi method differ. They say if you can on your temples, you should do so. Or on your upper head, you should do so. The hanbali method say no, you don't need to do so. And then interestingly enough, in the maliki method, they mention the mas'ala where if you are not able to do sajdah on your forehead, so they say like you have an injury on your forehead, but you can do a normal sajdah, but just your forehead cannot go. In this case, what you have to do is indicate. You have to indicate. You don't need to do a sajdah. You can just indicate with your back and your neck, like how I explained. But what if you were to go into sajdah with your nose, and not your forehead doesn't touch? So you went into like a normal sajdah, but you didn't put your forehead. Everything else went on the floor. So here, there's a difference of opinion there in the maliki madhab, because Ashhab from the maliki says it will count. It's no problem, it will count. But Ibn al-Qasim in the Mudawwana, he phrases it in a way where it kind of indicates it might not count. So some of the Maliki fuqaha have said that in conclusion of this mas'ala, Ibn al-Qasim is in line with Ashhab, and that the sajdah would be valid if a person intended to indicate with sajdah and not to, even though he put his nose on the ground, but he didn't intend a full sajdah. They say because indicating doesn't have a full limit. It doesn't have a full limit, so you can go as far as possible. So based on that, they conclude like that. And then in the Maliki madhab, they touch on an interesting mas'ala. It's a mas'ala it's important to know now because I found their madhab explaining it the clearest compared to the others. Because when we touch on a mas'ala, what if a person is stuck in mud? He can't get out, or he's in a surface where it's muddy. How does he pray salah? Or he's in water. They speak on a mas'ala we're going to discuss on a person like swimming in the water or drowning. How does he pray salah? Or a person just with his legs in the water and he can't get out to land to perform salah. How does he pray salah? So here the Maliki madhab say if a person is performing salah standing, and he's going to perform ruku as he does, but then sajdah is going to indicate because he can't go on the ground. Either he's not capable or there's some problem like water or something to go into the ground and sajdah. Then they say in this case, when he bends his head and his neck, does he indicate with his hands as well? Or does he lead them? They say on the sides. So here there's two opinions. Some of the Maliki scholars say that indicating includes the hands. So therefore he'd use his hands. As we said just now that people do, which is a mistake. The Maliki madhab, they have an opinion that indicates that a person uses his hands. The other opinion is a person keeps them on the sides. And when sitting, they say if a person is sitting and he's able to put his hands and he's not able to put his hands on the ground, and he's able to put his hands on the ground, does he put it on the ground or does he keep it on his knees? So here they say a person is sitting and he's not able to do sajdah, but he's able to put his hands on the ground. So when he indicates for sajdah, does he put his hands on the ground, as we mentioned just now, or does he put it here, they say on his knees. So here there's two opinions again. Some say you put it on the ground, and again, just like earlier, they differ on the ruling. Is it mustahab or mandub or wajib to indicate with the hands, or in this case to put it on the ground, or do you just put it on your knees in this case? So both opinions are there in the Maliki madhab. And so a person performing sajdah, so the Maliki school touches on another mas'ala only found by them, and that is in ruku'. If a person is sitting and performing a ruku', his hands go where? they go on his knees. They go on his knees. So he puts his hands on his knees, and then he'd indicate with his head and his back. And in sajdah, his hands can go on his knees, or on the sides, as the Maliki school say, or on the legs of the chair, or it can go on his thighs. But the other schools say you do not make an indication with your hands as well. So this is the common thing people do, but it's not to be done. A person cannot pray on his right or left side, he performs salah on his back. The Hanafi madhab, if he cannot pray sitting, he prays on his back. He prays on his back. And they also say there he can pray on his sides, but the back is better. Either right or left side, but the back is better. The others say he prays on his sides. And if he prays on his back, with being able to perform salah on his sides, the hanbali madhab say it's makruh. So they say it's valid, but it's makruh. Why? They say it's makruh because some ulama say it's invalid. Some ulama say it's invalid to pray on the back when able to on the sides. So the hanbali madhab say it's valid, but makruh, with no excuse. So when you pray salah on the back, your ruku and sajdah will be indicated with your neck. You just move it forward towards your chest again, your chin towards your chest, a little bit for ruku, more for sajdah. But they say that you should put a pillow or something behind your head, so your head can lift up a bit and face the qiblah. Because they say when you perform salah lying on your back, the back of your feet face the qiblah. The back of your feet, the soles of your feet, the underneath of your feet, they face the qiblah. This is other than the Hanafi madhab. In the Hanafi madhab, you keep the soles of your feet on the ground and you raise your knees. You raise your knees. You raise your knees and the back of your feet are on the ground. Like that you sit. Or like that you lie down. Why? Because they say it's makruh tanzihi, or it's makruh to face your feet towards the qiblah. So based on that, they say you do not keep the soles of your feet towards the qiblah. Rather, you keep your legs up and your soles are on the ground, and then your knees are bending upwards. So with regards to the rule on placing the feet towards the qiblah, Imam Ahmad rahmatullahi alayhi, he has some phrases of his where he deemed it, he said makruh, to keep your back towards the qiblah. And the hanbali fuqaha say back towards the qiblah has a meaning of feet as well. So they said also your feet towards the qiblah, to stretch it towards the qiblah. Ibn Muflih says tarkuhu awla, that it's better not to do. It's not makruh, but it's better not to do. The Shafi scholars, I found them mentioning stretching towards the Kaaba only, and say there it's makruh. Ibn Hajar al-Haytami says to stretch your feet towards the Kaaba, that is makruh. So the Hanafi madhab are the ones who straight up say makruh. The Hanbali madhab say it's better not to do so. But they say it's not makruh because certain times you face your feet towards the qibla. Like in this case, or like a person who's on his deathbed. You face his feet towards the qibla. So those indicates that it's not makruh at all times, so the rule cannot be makruh. So in that case, the Shafi'i madhab say when you put something under your head, you have to put something under your head in Shafi'i madhab, but they say except in one case. And that is if you is praying salah in the Kaaba. They say if you're praying salah in the Kaaba, then you don't need to put anything under your head because your head will be facing the Kaaba. But they say if it has a roof. So other Shafi'i scholars say even if it doesn't have a roof, you can still not put anything under your head and your salah will be valid. And in the Kaaba, they say even if you pray salah on your stomach, you're lying on your stomach, so your back is towards the sky, the salah will be valid. Salah will be valid. So the last mas'ala, the last one I'll try to do quickly, and that is if a person cannot pray on his back, he's praying on his back, but he cannot move his head, then how does he pray? Here there's a few opinions. I'm going to mention them all quickly. Yes, inside the Kaaba. Okay, so a person who can pray on his back, but he cannot move his head, then he prays here in the Hanbali madhab, they say, using his eyes. So here some ulama, Shaykh Mutaffar says he closes his eyes. So when he wants to do, he prays indicating with his eyes. So when he wants to go to ruku, he closes his eyes a little bit, and for sajdah, and then he opens it up for standing up after ruku, and then he closes it more for sajdah. And some ulama say you don't pray with your eyes. There's no eye salah. In this case, what do? You just intend the actions of salah. So you articulate the words and you intend the actions of salah. This is the second opinion in the Hanbali madhab. They say you do not pray with your eye because the hadith is extremely weak. It's from some of the grandchildren of Ali radiallahu anhu. They narrate this hadith. So they say you do not need to move your eyes. You intend the action and then you articulate the words. And if you cannot articulate the words, because we said last time, the minimum thikr, the minimum that would count for reciting or the dhikr is to slightly hear yourself. If you cannot do that, at least move your tongue in your lips. If you cannot do that, then you intend the dhikr. You intend the dhikr. But you cannot. But you should. Most of the ulama, hanbali, and the stronger opinion in the Hanafi madhab and Shafi'i madhab is you have to hear yourself. So you cannot just move your tongue in your lips for reciting. That will not count as reciting. The maliki madhab and the second opinion, the weaker one, the hanbali and Hanafi madhab, is that you can just move your tongue in your lips. You don't need to hear anything. It would count. It would count. So if a person cannot articulate, then he just prays salah through intention. He prays salah through intention. He prays salah through intention. So therefore, he'd be sitting on his bed and he'd intend now, he's standing in salah, he's standing, he'd intend Allahu Akbar, he'd intend Surah Al-Fatiha, he'd intend ruku, he'd intend the dhikr, and that's how he prays salah. So as long as the person is conscious, his salah will not fall. And this which I explained is the hanbali and Shafi'i madhab. So you pray salah standing, if not standing, then sitting. If not sitting, then lying on your right side or your left side. If not that, then your back. If not on your back, your back. Your back indicating with your neck, your head movements. If you cannot do that, then you pray with your eye. You pray with your eye. Hanbali and Shafi'i. If not that, then you pray indicating the actions, saying the words. If not that, you intend the words and the actions. You intend the words and actions. The second opinion in the Hanbali madhab is you don't pray with your eye, but you just go on to the next step of articulating the words and intending the actions. In the Maliki madhab, you pray salah standing, if not standing, then sitting, then lying on your right side, lying on your left side, lying on your back. Then they have you lie on your stomach. You lie on your stomach. You lie on your stomach. And if you cannot do that, when you lie on your stomach, your head faces the qiblah. Your head has to face the qiblah. So like you are in sujood, but you just go flat. Like you are in sujood, but your head goes flat. And then, if you can't do that, then whichever body part you're able to use to make an indication. So they say even your hand or your eyebrow, or they say غير ذلك, or other than that from his body parts. Whichever body part he can use, that he can use to indicate his hand or his eyebrows, or other than that, then he prays with that, indicating with that body part. If he's not able to do that, then he indicates, then he intends the actions of salah. And then if he's not able to even articulate, then the madhab says that he intends the salah. He said that's on the principles of the madhab. Because some Maliki scholars, they say that if there's no mention of a mas'ala in the Maliki books, you look at the Shafi'i scholars. Just like hanbali. If there's no mention from the Hanbali scholars, you look at the Shafi'i scholars. And here the Shafi'i madhab says, you pray the salah through intention. So the Maliki madhab, many scholars say that based on the principles of the madhab, you intend the salah. You intend the salah. And the Hanafi madhab, the last thing, the Hanafi madhab, you pray standing, if not standing, then sitting, if not sitting, lying on your back or on your sides, back is better. If you cannot pray, indicating with your head while lying on your back, salah falls. Salah falls. You do not pray salah. And if it's more than a day and night of salah, which means 5 salah, then you do not need to make qadha of that salah. You don't need to make qadha of that salah. Either you're unconscious or you're not able to move your head for 5 salah. Right? More than that, you don't need to qadha at all. And if less than that, then you do qadha. But they have a few more details on if a person is capable for a short period of time, and then is incapable again, does he do qadha, what breaks the sequence, etc. That we won't mention. That should be questioned by somebody who wants to know from the Hanafi ulama, inshallah. And with that, we've covered most of the main masail. I forgot to mention. And that is in the Hanafi madhab. In the Hanafi madhab, to perform salah sitting, if a person is able to do sajdah on the ground, then in this case, his ruku' will be done moving his back and his neck. So he'll be doing Allahu Akbar, Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, Sami Allahu Hamida. And his sajdah will be on the ground. If he's not able to do sajdah on the ground, then he's indicating for ruku' and sajdah would not be with his back. They say ima is just with the neck. So therefore, to do this for ruku' and then more for sajdah, as most people do, would not be according to the Hanafi madhab. It would not. In the Hanafi madhab, you move your neck. If you cannot do sajdah on the ground, you just move your neck. So you'd be sitting, and then you Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, Subhana Rabbiyal Sami Allahu Hamida, Allahu Akbar. You obviously say Rabbana lakal hamd, but then your sajdah would be Subhana Rabbiyal A'la with your neck. That's how you perform salah in the Hanafi madhab. So if you're in a plane or something, and you cannot do sajdah on the ground, you cannot pray salah standing, and you cannot perform sajdah on the ground, then in the Hanafi madhab, you just make neck movements. You just make head movements. That's all. You don't need to move your back like that in the Hanafi madhab if you cannot perform sajdah on the ground. Forgot to mention that, so I just wanted to mention it here. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to teach us that which benefits us and to benefit us with that which He taught us. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين.